The best of them bleed it out, while the rest of them peter out. Truth or consequence, say it aloud. Use that evidence, race it around. There goes my hero. Watch him as he goes. There goes my hero. He's ordinary. This is the Community Solutions Podcast. Jason Bradley, Andrew Richter. Here we are once again, saying all sorts of things that are going to make the left go crazy.
Is that what they do? Is that what they do?
You know they all listen.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, what did you say again? What was the last word of that song now?
The last word?
No, not the last word. The last phrase.
He's ordinary.
Now, before that.
There goes my hero.
Okay.
Yeah.
Damn, I've heard this before.
Yeah. I would guess so.
Well, what does that mean? Am I supposed to know this? Did you do this one thinking I would know it?
No, I just did it because it fit.
Okay.
That's the rules of this game. It has to fit in with the topic of the show.
Oh, I thought it was all about me. Okay, I guess it's not then?
No.
There goes my hero. Oh, God, it's totally on the tip of my tongue, too. I think that was a theme song to a WrestleMania.
That could be.
You know, I know pop culture.
Yes.
30 years
Nobody knows it better than you.
30 years ago. You know, in your day it was Bill Haley in the Comets, but I know 30 years ago, okay? Now, I don't know. I can hear the song, okay, but I don't know who sings it.
Okay.
So why don't you give me like the initials here, and I'll get another quarter of a credit. And we're grading on that curve again, huh?
I'll give you the initials.
Yeah.
Do you know the name of the song at least?
Yeah, There Goes My Hero. I just said it.
Well, that's close.
Oh, okay.
I mean, My Hero.
My Hero.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. Why don't you just enlighten us? I'll never get it anyway.
Foo Fighters.
Foo Fighters.
Yes.
You just said FF. I still wouldn't have gotten it.
Really?
I don't think so.
I don't know how many bands have those initials, but...
Yeah, not many, but I wouldn't have come up with that.
Okay. Well.
So how old is that song?
Oh, my word. That's a good question. I don't know if...
Well, we don't need to look it up in the peanut gallery here. But
Jay,
you can look.
Rain Man for
you can look
up
up that. You can look up that stuff.
Okay.
I'm going to be brief here with the opening, or try to be.
Yeah.
So we have a very important guest, and it's very rare somebody outshines me on this show, but somebody's going to outshine me today. But first off,
I think you say that every time we have a guest.
Yeah. I've been known to.
Just kidding.
Okay. 3 prognostications, Jay.
Yes.
Now, as we record this, now, when this comes out, all these things are going to be, I'm either going to go somewhere between 0 for 3 and 3 for 3 here. We'll see what my batting average is. And I'm going to get a prognostication out of you, too.
Okay.
Chiefs-Niners, who do you got?
Chiefs.
Okay, I'm in agreement with you there.
Okay.
I could never cheer for San Francisco unless Jerry Rice or Steve Young or Joe Montana were on the team. That was a long time ago.
I mean, there's a part of me that would like to see the Niners win just because of Kaepernick's not playing in the game.
Oh, well. Okay, well, I can live with that.
I am fully on board with the Chiefs.
I think the Chiefs are going to win it, too. Okay. I don't know why. I just think they're going to.
Yeah.
And nobody who predicts these things on TV knows any more than we do. I'm convinced of that. Now, Monday, the day after the Super Bowl, everybody's hungover and all that. We have the Hawkeye Caucus.
Yes.
Down in the great state of Iowa. By one of the 4 trees in that state, we will have the Hawkeye Caucus. Jay, I'm going to go out on the limb. I told you months ago that I thought Joe Biden had no chance to win the Democratic nomination.
Well, he's got a chance.
He's got a small one.
Yeah.
I'm going to predict he wins on Monday. Yes, I'm going to. And I'm going to predict on the 4th that a senator from the state of Minnesota will be dropping out.
Really?
There's my 3 prognostics. See these bold predictions? Let me tell you something. Here's the thing about the Hawkeye Caucus.
Yes.
The way they do it is very screwy. You have to get 15% of the vote to get any delegates.
Right.
So I know polls, I don't know how you poll caucus scores. I think that's really tricky to do. I don't quite buy. I mean, Pete Buttigieg was so supposedly up in these same polls 3 weeks ago, so I don't really buy it. But the way it can happen is if you fall below that 15%, you can throw your support to another candidate. And there is rumors that there's some Biden chicanery going on with some other campaigns. And I think he will pull this out, and he'll get a whole 12 or 13 delegates, and somebody else will get 11, somebody else will get 9. It really doesn't matter.
Right.
Okay. So those are my 3 bold predictions. I'm going to make a little prediction that I think we're going to see a little surprising how bad Elizabeth Warren does.
Oh, yeah.
I think she's in danger of not even getting that 15%. She may finish 5th or lower.
That's possible.
I just, I just don't see anything. I don't see anything there, period. But I mean, but I think, the vice president's gotten a lot of criticism, rightfully so, because he undermines his own path to victory every time he talks.
Right.
But I think the reason that it hasn't materialized against him is because there's no issues that separate anybody.
That's true.
I mean, name me an issue. Put Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren there and tell me an issue. Okay, one of them's 81 and the other's 75. Okay, that's about the only difference between the two. So, I mean, there's nothing of substance.
Right.
Now, if the former vice president would stop groveling to the fringe and start, the rationale that he supposedly was running on in the first place, he'd run away with this thing. But he's just not smart enough to do that. I don't know. I think Sanders will win New Hampshire. Mm-hmm. I think Biden will win South Carolina. That's a closed primary. That's a little different.
What about Nevada? That comes before South Carolina.
Yeah, again, a caucus is tricky to predict. I mean, I've seen polls sort of all over the place there. Hard to predict. I would say I'd probably lean towards Sanders on that. And then here's the thing. You're going to know a nominee March 17th. Mm-hmm. March 3rd, you've got California, Texas, Virginia. There's a couple other big states. March 17th, you've got Ohio. You've got Florida. I think Pennsylvania is the only big state left. It's over on the 17th.
Yeah, it depends how it shakes out. I don't know. I mean,
think they're going to go till July. Let the superdelegates decide. Then it's Biden's for sure.
Well, I mean, we'll see. If
they might prove me wrong. I said
Sanders,
no 80-year-old white guy was going to win this.
If Sanders gets the first 3, I think Biden's in trouble.
Yeah, but delegate-wise, he's really not, because ultimately, if he comes in second 3 times,
and we'll see when Bloomberg jumps in. I mean,
he's in, but
supposedly nobody likes him. But
you got to remember, he's not on the ballot in New Hampshire. He's not on the ballot in South Carolina. And
it puts him behind.
I'm going to still say it's 50-50 that Hillary jumps.
It's probably 50-50.
She has to jump in by February something or other to get on the ballot for March 3rd.
Okay.
Because they're a little more lenient than, say, South Carolina.
Because I'll say this, the DNC is not going to want Bernie Sanders. And so if it looks like Bernie Sanders is pulling ahead, there's going to be something.
But remember, in 2018, they changed the rules. Mm-hmm. The only way the superdelegates get to vote, now I don't know how many people know this, is if somebody does not have the voted delegates clinched by then.
Right.
So then the superdelegates don't vote. There's 771 of them. Yeah. So if somebody's got that threshold, the superdelegates can't come in and overrule that anymore. They used to be able to. Right. Now they can't. But if somebody doesn't have that, and the superdelegates are all the Clinton, Obama people, that's who they all are.
Right.
So, Sanders has no chance then.
Right.
Not that I care. I'm just saying. And I find this very uninteresting. I'm just a political junkie, and if it's on, I can't help but watch it. It's a disease, I know. Look, I mean, I even watch George Snuffleupagus once in a while they wheel George Will in on his scooter store or his hover-round.
You're more devoted than I am, then.
Well, who's on Meet the Press now? Who hosts that now? F. Chuck Todd still?
Yeah.
I haven't watched it since Tim Russert died. Okay. I haven't watched it. I thought he was good, but I never watched it after that. So anyhow, now, what's your prediction? I'm going to put you on. What do you say about Iowa? And do you think Klobuchar's gone on Tuesday?
I don't think she's gone on Tuesday. I think she'll poll high enough that she's at least going to give it a shot through the next 2 or 3. I think
she's going to get 15%?
I think she's out once she's going to do better than she had originally thought she was going to do. And I think that's going to keep her in at least through New Hampshire and maybe Nevada, but then she's out. As far as
I don't know, between her and Don't Know No Opinion, it's kind of a a race.
I think it's possible that Sanders wins the first 3, although I could see Sanders and Biden splitting the first 4. So.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. The ultimate thing is the delegate count and the fundraising, and you're going to see people drop out, and where do their people go? And that's, we saw this in the Clinton, Edwards, Obama election. We saw this in the Trump, Cruz, Rubio. I mean, we at some point it gets down to 2 or 3 people, and I think it's going to get there faster than ever before. Now, I mean, you've got 6 weeks, and we should pretty much know it. We may not. You're right. It may go further.
Yeah.
But boy, would that be extra boring. Oh goodness.
Yeah.
I mean, I've stomached a Democratic question or two. I won't say debate, question or two, and that's about all I could handle.
Yeah.
I don't even think I could watch the debates in the fall. I don't even think I can.
Well,
I mean, everybody else will watch. It's not going to affect my vote, so why do I need to watch it? There's got to be something better on, like I don't know, Treehouse Building or something.
Reruns of Cagney and Lacey.
For Simon and Simon, I'm watching them for sure. So anyhow, so you say Sanders on Monday.
Back and forth between him and Biden. I don't know.
Jay, you're like my wife trying to pick out a new color for the bedroom.
But since you went with Biden, I will go with Sanders.
All
so
right.
There's a little competition. Okay. How about that?
Klobuchar doesn't drop out after
I don't think so. I think
she's going to beat Don't Know No Opinion by enough to where she could stay in.
I think she will either after New Hampshire or Nevada.
All right.
So.
All right. There you have it. There you have the great prognostication.
I think she's still jockeying for an administration spot. So.
Well, Trump's not going to hire her for anything, so she can forget about it.
Well, exactly.
All right. We'll have fun with the prognostications. At least we're on the same page with the football game.
Right.
So, all right.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Okay.
I mean, I'm going to predict one thing, though, about the Hawkeye Caucus.
Yeah.
One person's going to be at 24%, 22%, 19%, 17%, and we're going to really know nothing more after that.
Yeah.
That'll be what I say.
Right.
But having to get that 15% is, that's tough, and it's a dumb strategy to put on Klobuchar's part. We've seen this with other people too, putting everything into one early state. I mean, that's crazy.
Right.
So, what's Iowa? One 200th of the country? I mean, what?
Yeah, and let me say this. I mean, if you can't win your neighboring state, if there's nobody from that state in it, you're in trouble. Exactly.
If I wanted to be governor of South Dakota, I could be it. Okay? I mean, I will win a neighboring state. So, all right. We have a jam-packed show that will not be topped.
That's right. We have our own super delegate on today.
That's right. I mean, and when this podcast goes into our Hall of Fame, which is yet to be built, it will stand out as that. There's another prognostication I'm making, that it will stand out as one of the best episodes. And for once, not because of me. And people say I'm arrogant. What is all this tweeting that I'm arrogant? Unbelievable. Jay, you do all the introductions. You bring on our world-class guests that we've alluded to so many times on this show, and we're finally going to give the viewers who've stuck with us for 3 years now on to season 4. We avoided arbitration, and season 4 is, although we're still looking for that long-term deal, to get rid of our free agent years.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, maybe we'll cover this a little bit in the interview, but when we got our start and we kind of branched out of Crystal after winning those races, we met somebody when we were doing our speaking out and about that had a mindset a lot like ours and was already taking care of business in the city that he lived in. He was mayor when we met him, and he cleaned that city up, and the city has enjoyed tax increases of 0% for many years, and And he's just got a great insight into how to turn things around locally because he's done it. So we want to welcome Mayor Mark Corin to the show.
Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate the opportunity. It's kind of like old times, because we've known each other for many, many years. And the experiences that I learned from you guys, just talking to friends and neighbors and people that are having the same concerns are what really drives me to do what I did over the last 26 years. Mm-hmm. So, I was... how do you want to do this? Do you want me to tell the viewers background? Or?
Yeah, maybe, Mark, just tell your background and how you got in. We'll start with how you got into local politics, what motivated you to start. It's interesting how you and I got into it. It's got to be interesting how you got in. How did you get? What did you do first when it came to? Was there an issue that got you in? How'd you get started up in Oak Grove?
Well, I've owned my property up in Oak Grove, Minnesota, since 1985, and then I built my own house. I did my own driveway. I moved in 1991, and I felt that moving into a community that was mostly farms and some rural and some industrial, little bit of that, some commercial, was something I was interested in. I wanted to find out more, and there was a local city hall right down the road, and I just started to go to every city council meeting. And I remember what really floored me when I first started going. I'd sit in the audience, and there was me, and every once in a while somebody else would sit in there, and the mayor looked at me at the time, and he goes, "Don't you have anything better to do?" That's what he said to me. And I looked at him, and I thought, you know what? Now I need to be here. And I said to him, somebody has to keep an eye on you guys. And I started going every single city
Mark,
council meeting.
Put this in perspective. Is this back in the 90s?
Yeah, back in the early 90s.
Okay. So these aren't necessarily on the computer to watch whenever you know what I mean?
No.
Totally different. I just want to set the stage where it's a totally different era. You're not downloading the meeting or something like that. You really had to be there to see. You couldn't get the agenda, the city website. Very different time.
Yeah, one of the things that happened immediately after I built my house was they bypassed my road with a faster road, and then they turned ours into a little kind of a side road, if you will. And I started just listening and looking at the control that these city leaders were going to dictate to people that lived on my street. And unless I got involved, I didn't have anything to say. So I had the mentality that if I didn't get involved, I didn't have the right to complain. That's me. Okay? And as I was going up there 1 year, one of the first years, they posted a position for Parks Commission chairman, or Parks Commission. So I was appointed to be on the Parks Commission, and I did that for about a year.
So you did have something better to do.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no. So then I got appointed by the commission to be the chair of the Parks Commission. I did that for a couple years. And then there was an opening on the Planning Commission, and I did the Planning Commission just as a member for the first 2 years, and then I became the chair of the Planning Commission, wrote most of the ordinances for 15 years. So I really, and this is going to sound different, I really truly believe that there's more to being an elected official than just, I have the right skin color, I have the right background, I have the right genitalia, or I don't. I have the right horns, or I have the right pantsuit, or I have whatever, to be an elected official. I'm not going to stick my chest out and pretend I'm the smartest brain trust in the room. I really, as an engineer, that's what I do for my day job, if you will. I'm a business owner, and I make aviation safety electronics. I've spent most of my life in the medical device manufacturing world, in the private sector, and I wanted to share my leadership, my management, my entrepreneurship, my inventiveness in city government. And
Boy, they must have been floored by that.
well, they were. I mean, we were a small community. I mean, we were.
Yeah, that's a city that's grown a lot.
Oh,
in the
yeah.
last 30 years since you moved there.
Everybody
too.
wants to move to Oak Grove now. Well, for what we did in my later years.
You got me thinking about it.
it's a beautiful community, but
George, right
those years of being the planning commission chairman, I remember people coming in with comp plan amendments, or they wanted to subdivide their properties, and I helped write most of the ordinances. I was involved in all the comp plan amendments. There's a comp plan that has to be created every 10 years. I helped write most of those. I chaired those meetings. I eventually ran for city council and was elected first to be on the city council. And I'll tell you what, after all of the knowledge and all the things and all my business experience to try to bring that into city, the city staff and the city administrator at the time would work day and night to undermine. There was me and another city council member that were both staunch conservatives. And there were three others, the mayor and two others, that were just basically against everything that we stood for. And I worked at understanding how they worked the system, how the staff would undermine our direction, mine and Scott Lawrence's direction. And we almost gave up. We just said, look, I'm tired going home. I've got holes in my head from hitting it against a brick wall. I'm so tired of trying to be a person that can suggest changes, common sense changes.
So Mark, let me just ask a
Sure.
question. You don't need to give like a specific example, but I mean, what would be, just kind of out of left field, a simple thing you tried to do that you ran into just a buzzsaw? And did you win anything during that time?
During that
Was it
time,
all for naught, or did you have any success at picking off anybody or changing anybody's mind, or and if you can think of something where you could just, okay, here's a simple thing we tried to do and ran into, a freight train.
Well, to me, government should be in the background. I mean, I made promises when I ran for city council and then eventually as mayor, and then I ran for a second term as mayor, and I always stood firm by being a statesman. A statesman to me and my leadership has really been based on a foundation. That foundation, I made promises and I was not going to deviate from that foundation. So I said when I got elected, I would work day and night at reducing taxes because our previous city council members were double-digit increasing every single year. And I was sick of that. Every single year. There was no difference. Everybody is cut to the bone. Any kind of business that you've ever gone into, especially in government, the city council members that are, the staff knows best. When I was just a city council member and Scott and I would get together and we'd try to say, look, why do you need a brand new pickup truck? This one's 10 years old, yes, but it's got 22,000 miles on it. Why do you need that? Well, because it's budgeted and we have to buy a new one. And
end of its useful life, and we heard all that.
That's right. So little things like that just started eating on me. And I started looking at the way it's almost, and I want to make a disclaimer. Not all city workers are the type that want to take advantage of their environment. There are a lot of great city, state, county workers that are out there. The problem is that you don't have leadership that's going to hold them all accountable. You don't have people that's going to go in and question. That's the biggest thing that we tried to do when I was on city council, just a city council member, was to ask the question, why? How come? What can we do different? Why do you have to do that? You start asking those questions and they get really perturbed, especially my city administrator. So when I ran for mayor, I told my city administrator.
So at this point, how long had you been on the council for?
2 years.
2 years.
Yeah,
okay.
It's a 4-year term.
So you were looking at, you got a mayor in 2010?
Yeah, I ran in 2009 and I got in 2010.
Okay.
And I told my city administrator, I said, the first thing I'm going to do is fire you if I get elected or when I get elected. And she quit 2 days after I got elected.
I was about to say, would she getting her resume together? I'm sure you'd have given a glowing recommendation, Mark.
She didn't give me the privilege of firing her. Okay. Now, obviously, I'm tongue in cheek. It has to be 3 out of 5 city council members, right?
Sure.
But the good thing that we had going for me when I ran for mayor, there was another conservative that won. So it was 2 city council members, myself, that were the pack. Any organization, whether it's Democrats in the House or Republicans in the House, you need a consensus to get anything accomplished. But you can, even if you're in the minority, and that's where I have a problem with the House Republicans, is even if you're in the minority, bring up. People want to hear that you're unhappy with this. Make a point. You know you're not going to get it through the governor, but make a point.
Make it say happen. This. Make them vote on it.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let them own it.
There's got to be a difference between me as mayor and the guy that's working against me all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I ran as mayor, this is something that you guys may have forgot. My company, my sales are more than the budget of our city, right? So, and I've got way more employees than I have in the city hall. So I put together a proposal when I was mayor the first year that I would volunteer to be the interim city administrator because they wanted $100,000 plus $40,000 for benefits plus headhunting firm costs. So it was roughly $140,000, $160,000 to run somebody worthwhile to be a replacement city administrator.
Right.
So I volunteered. Let me say that again. I volunteered to be the interim city administrator while I was mayor.
He might be the only person to volunteer for a 6-figure job.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I did. The city council wanted to give me a stipend, and there was some discussion on it, and I said, you know what? The people that are against me, the Democrats, the naysayers, the people that just hate us conservatives, they would use that against me. So I made a conscious decision to just say, I'm going to do it for free. That was when the Star and Tribune wrote an article about me under the whistleblower section, and they labeled it public servant or dictator.
Now, Mark, how did you wear that? Was that a badge of honor to you? Or, because, to me, calling you a volunteer, a dictator, an elected official, let's
Yes.
not forget what you were.
Yes.
You couldn't have been the interim free city administrator without being mayor. What did you think of? Did they talk to you about that? I remember the article, but I don't remember.
Paul Levy, actually, there's more to that story, too. He interviewed me, and I learned a valuable lesson. You never, as an elected official, you never talk on radio, on telephone, or in person without recording it to a reporter. Because I found out that they craft a story.
Yes.
So Paul Levy wrote the article. He called me on my cell phone, and I put him on speakerphone. He read me the article on Friday afternoon to me and my wife. And it was factual. It wasn't all glamorous or anything. There was some question about the legality of an elected official doing a job, full-time job as a city administrator. But then Sunday it came out on Mother's Day. My mother was very happy that day. Under the whistleblower and just damning me. How dare you, Mayor, volunteer to run a company full-time, that's what I was doing, company of 60 employees, and volunteer to be the city administrator, which almost killed me physically. And I looked at it as a way to give information back to the city council. Because I ran the city, I looked at the operations, I looked to see what they were doing, and it gave me it's so much different, guys. It's so much different being on the inside than the outside looking in. Do you know what I mean by that?
Oh, yes.
And having that inside information, because the first 2 years that we were on city council, we held everything at 0% levy increase while we assessed staffing requirements. And that was right at the time that the building department went from 110 homes a year to 0. Okay, but yet we had 2 full-time inspectors, we had a building official, and they were swamped. Tell me again how this works, right? Okay, so you kind of know where we were going, right? So over the 6 months or 8 months, no, it was almost 9 months, I groomed the city planner from my business experience or management experience. I mentored him, and then he eventually stepped in after almost in November. So I did it for about 11 months. And I worked there from 7 in the morning until roughly 11 or 12, and then I went into my office and worked there from 12 until 6, 7, 8, whatever. And I did that 5 days a week. So, I mean, it was an experience, but it really gave me a lot of credibility that the naysayers just hated. They just hated. I'm sorry, I don't. But you talk about some of the things we did. We looked at staffing. We reduced staffing. They had 2 people in payroll. We got rid of the 2 accountants in payroll, and they had a finance director. We outsourced to Paychecks. We got rid of 2 full-time staff, went to Paychecks for $8,000 a year to do payroll. We had 1 part-time person doing accounts payable, receivable. One of the things that I have in my company is I have a part-time payroll person, or accounts payable, receivable, works from 9 to 3:30, 3 days a week in my company. And yet they had 3 full-time people doing accounts payable, receivable in a city that's budget is less than the sales of my old company. And I looked at this and this is just crazy. The staffing levels, and it's not, people go, well, there's something wrong in your city. You guys have a problem. And I'm like, look deep into your city, each person's city. If you want to be bold, start asking the questions.
Now, let me ask the question this way. I mean, is when you pushed back, let me go back a little bit. When you push back against staffing levels and, comparing it to your own company and that kind of thing, what were you given as reasons? I mean, was it just kind of, well, this is just the way we do it. This is the way the city next door does it. This is the way, I mean, what were you given as pushback?
Okay, let me give you a great example. When I was still a city council member, Scott and I we would have to write up our own resolutions. Usually the city administrator writes up resolutions so that they can present them to the city council. Well, they refused to write up a resolution because I'd write one up that says elimination of the finance person, elimination of the public works supervisor, or whatever, right? Well, I remember writing up to eliminate the 2 inspectors and make the building official do the inspections. And our city clerk and city administrator spent weeks pulling together, listen to this, all of the open permits back to 1985. There were 900 non-closed out building permits. When you go into a building, city, you pull a building permit to put a furnace in. You don't call for inspections. 1985, they went back and they said, not only can you not fire the 2 building officials, not only can you not get rid of the building official, but you're going to have to hire 2 more people to go back and inspect every single non-closed building permit.
So what were the 2 inspectors doing if there were 900 open ones?
Well,
you got to get rid of those cartoons in the office.
Absolutely. Going from 110 homes a year down to 2 or 4, and you still had 2 full-time building officials, it's crazy. And yet they were swamped. How does that happen? It's mind-boggling. And that was some of the things that we were doing along the path of being an elected official.
Now, I got an election question for you. So how did you, like, when you ran for mayor, I mean, how did you take this message to the people? You know, because you had to do that to get to mayor. I mean, you had to, how did you articulate what you were, because I can see how this could be spun by your opponents and all that against you. I mean, what was your strategy to take it to the people and explain, you know, your business background and what you were doing and all that? I mean, how did you do that?
There's an old saying in running for an election: he who has the most signs wins. And you just have to be yourself. You have to be passionate about your message. I am obviously the most loud, outspoken person on my council. But people can connect with not only me, but my message, because they're looking. Look at Donald Trump. You know, there's some things I look and I say, gosh, why did you just do that? But yet, I'm like, he is really trying to do what he feels is best. I made a promise when I was city council member that I would use all of those years of learning. I was around a lot of smart people growing up in electronics and engineering and development and all that, and I just benefited from all that. And I wanted to share that as an elected official, a statesman, a person that people can get passionate about. And yeah, there's people that are passionate the other side too, right?
We don't know anything about that, right, Jay?
A little bit.
I've always said passion sells.
Yes.
You know, I've always said that.
Yeah.
You know, it really, if you're not enthusiastic, nobody's going to get enthusiastic about you.
Yeah, I mean, we have some really great employees in our city. There are employees, I get calls from other city administrators. There were things that I got involved with as a city administrator and as a city mayor that other mayors call me up and ask for my advice, or how did you do this, or what happened in your city with that? We fought the Met Council. I actually, when I was in my second term, I had to go down to the state capitol and fight for our rights, our residents' rights.
We'll get into that. Right. Don't worry. We'll cover anything about the Met Council.
But you know, doing elections is tough. You sacrifice. It's people that want to be an elected official. You better think long and hard if you want to do it right. I don't have six-pack abs, and I don't have a blonde flowing hair, and I'm not a young.
Nobody's called you Fabio?
No, not yet.
I got to say something, Mark. I mean, when I ran in my hometown, I was a go big or not do it at all kind of person too. Right. And I will say this, that even though I did not win, I wish everybody could have that experience. I wish the positives so outweigh the negatives. I wish everybody could spend one summer knocking on people's doors, listening to people's concerns, asking what they think, talking to people at barbecues and parades and festivals. And I wish everybody could take one summer in their life and do that. And it was exhausting.
There's a word you're missing.
Yeah.
Humbling.
Yes.
It's extremely humbling to walk up to a door. That was the hardest thing for me, is to walk up to the door, knock on the door, somebody opens the door, and I remember one lady. To this day, I tell this story real quick. I walked up to the door, and I knock on the door, and this young lady, really nice lady, 2 kids in the back, opens the door with a stick of butter. Like she's going to use it to protect herself. And I nicknamed her the butter lady. The butter lady, And she was the nicest young lady. And we had a nice talk, and then I came back to talk to her and her husband later. And then the next year I came up and I go, "You're the butter lady." But, you meet some really cool people, and there are a lot of people that respected what I did and what I stood for in my city. I really care about our community. I care about Minnesota. I care about the United States deeply. I have really good conversations with our sheriff, Anoka County Sheriff Stewart. He's a great guy. He's down to earth. He really cares about his community, his people, and what our sheriff's department and police departments do for the community is outstanding. The first responders, firefighters, and all that, it's just I really respect what they do, and as an elected official, it's really hard to get respect. I feel like Rodney Dangerfield at the time.
Well, and I suppose being, acting as the administrator, you got to respect the good ones pretty quick, and that separation, I'm sure, happened really fast.
Oh yeah, I used to say you can't please everybody. You try very, very hard, and there's always 50% that don't like what you want, what you stand for. If you're not going to agree with them, they're going to hate you no matter what. And then you have to try to tell them that the ordinances and the rules can be changed, but there's rules and ordinances that we try to live by, and if they're outside of the whack, we changed a lot of ordinances in our city to make them common sense and down to earth, outside in the background, not overbearing. Did you guys deal with that in your city stuff?
Oh yeah.
When our friends won the city council, one of the things we did is we had a task force to go through the city code and recommend. I chaired it for a year.
Okay.
And we eliminated a lot of stuff. I mean, it was eye-opening. I had known a lot of it previously, running for office, but it was shocking to see what is actually in there. My favorite one was the one where there was actually a city code that said you couldn't have a pool table across the street from a city building. It's no joke. And they had a bowling alley, and they built the new public works building across the bowling alley had 3 pool tables, and they built the new public works building across the street. They were violating their own code. And I pointed that out to the city attorney and a few other. We had a laugh about it, but I'm like, well, you guys can just do it anyway. Mr. and Mrs. Smith over here are going to get, potentially in trouble for that. And there was a lot of unenforced things, and like the questions. Okay, well, if we're not doing it, why is it there? If we're not going to, we can't. If we enforce it on one person and not, there was great conversations. Maybe it didn't go as far as I had hoped, but it was something that I don't know that another city anywhere has stripped their entire. And this was a task force. This wasn't the council waiting for a problem to happen and then reacting to it. This was a proactive thing that was really the brainchild of kind of a lot of us. But how do we do it? How do we go through the city code? And so it took a few years. So
one of the things that I stepped up on right away was my concern about the double-digit increases in taxes every year in our city, and the nonstop spending. Just spend. We'll get more next year. Spend. We'll even get more next year. And one of the things that really bothered me is we went, and I'm holding my hands up here, but our finance book from our finance director was, I'd say, 4 inches thick, because those games that you had to slide the squares around, you had one open spot and you had to kind of mix all things. Yeah. Well, all our finances were so. The accountant would use J.D. Edwards software and an Excel spreadsheet and then another program to cross-check everything, and it was so convoluted. The first day I was at the volunteer city administrator, I went into my finance director and I said, can you get me a copy of our finances? I want to go over them because I want to see how we figured out what cost accounting methods we use and all that. She brought me that book that was about 4 to 6 inches thick. And I said, can you explain to me how this works? What I know finances, right? I run a business. Yeah, you get it, right? You know the ins and outs of finance, right? I could not understand what they did. It was so convoluted.
Boy, does that sound familiar?
Yeah. Sure does.
You know what she said to me? She said, well, maybe you should go back to school and get a degree in governmental accounting. And I said, you know what? I said, your job is to make me understand what's going on because I have to explain it to my residents. And if I can't understand it, how do you expect the residents to understand it?
You know, the fact you can get a degree in governmental accounting just shows the problem right there.
Right.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Government. There is a program too, and
Government planning.
So what happened was she quit. She went to a county office or something. So we hired an outside accounting firm that specializes in governmental accounting. She took that 4 to 6 inch thick. Basically, it was a giant. I call it a shell game. In her eyes, I'm sure she was, because we have to get audited every year and all that stuff. Right. It was so out of control. I to this day, I'm just shocked that it was ever allowed. But it went to about 3 or 4 pages. 3 or 4 pages. And this is an outside firm that specializes in that.
Where were they the 20 years before?
So we were able to, the first 2 years we held 0% levy increase. The first year I was mayor, we cut taxes 18%. 18%. Then the next year, we totaled 34%. So a total of 34% tax reduction in the first 2 years of being mayor. So we held 30, that's one, in our city, it's $1.2 million.
Hold on, I got to adjust my pacemaker. I'm not sure I heard that right.
Honestly, we had a levy decrease tax base of 34% reduction in taxes. Honestly. 34%.
Wow. Now, this isn't one of those cuts where we're going to. The baseline says to raise it 4%, and we raised it 3.5. That's not what you're talking about, right? Okay.
Like
I know I'm joking.
A decrease of the increase, right? Yeah, no. We honestly cut our taxes. In our city, it was $1.2 million, and the last day of my 8th year of being an elected official, the mayor, we held 0% levy increases after that 34% reduction for 6 years running.
Wow.
6 years at 0%. I stepped down last year because we had a city council member, one of the conservatives that was working with me. I mean, we worked hand in hand through the finances and all that. And he asked me, he says, I would like to be mayor. I want to do one more 4-year term. I'd like to run as mayor, but I don't want to run against you. And I said, you know what? I don't believe government should be a lifestyle. It shouldn't be a place that is, it's a forever place. And he helped immensely of, yes, I'm the most loud, outspoken, I'm the focal point of our city's leadership. And I stepped down, helped him on his campaign. We went door to door. I helped him put up signs, did the brochures with him. We got him reelected or elected, and I stepped down. So that's kind of last year was my last year of being mayor.
Now, if I could ask a question about taxes. So you brought the tax levy down and you held that. I know in a lot of cities, however, their tax levy is a portion of what people pay in taxes. I mean, you've got bonds, and you've got TIF financing, and you've got franchise fees, and you've got assessments, and you've got all this.
Let me readjust my page.
Knowing you, obviously, we know what to expect, but why don't you explain for people? I mean, just that we call them hidden taxes because people don't get that in the mail. They get the tax levy in the mail from the county.
Right.
And that's all they see, and that's all they think they pay. But there's this whole other thing. And how did you address those?
Well, the biggest thing that most people misunderstand is your city taxes are probably the lowest part of your total tax burden.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So the school district and the county taxes are the highest two portions of your city or your your home or your taxes on your property
yeah.
taxes.
Yeah.
So the rest of the taxes, basically what you do, the way we looked at it was like a business, and let me tell you this, anybody that says you can't run a government organization like a business should be run out of town. Because regardless of whether or not you have to make a profit or not, you're providing a service at a reasonable cost. It's all about holding people accountable, holding jobs accountable for expenditures, and trying to get the best value for your residents. Now, you asked, do you have enterprise funds? Do you have bonds that you have to pay for certain expenditures? We didn't. We actually eliminated all that stuff. We eliminated the TIF district. We didn't have. We went overboard to eliminate any bonds. We had cash. We started out with $12 million in rainy day funds. 12 million, and they were double-digit increasing anyways.
Yeah.
Now. That's like saying I've got money in my left pocket, but I'm broke because I don't have anything in my right pocket. Right?
Then my back pocket, my sock.
So we looked at, excuse me, we looked at expenditures that, for example, we took some of that quote-unquote, I'm doing the air quotes, rainy day funds, and paid down a bond on a redevelopment area that the city got involved in way before we did.
Don't you like cleaning up those messes from 20 years before?
But you know what? The way I looked at the way, and every city's got quote unquote rainy day funds, the what if stuff.
They name it something different. Every city says it's something different, but they all have them.
Right.
Buckets of money.
But we looked at it as what is needed, what is expected, what is the role of government, what is a leader supposed to do. There are certain things that we're like roads and infrastructure for creating a community. But is it the government's job to entertain people? Is it the government's job to create all these places for everybody to go and that not everybody will use? Trains ringing a bell, but that's another old topic, I'm sure. But am I answering your question properly?
Yeah, I mean, you got rid of the bonds.
Yes.
You weren't taking on new debt.
Nope.
I know you didn't have franchise fees up there. Did you?
Well, there was.
Yeah.
We canceled them.
Yeah.
Like the cable it's just a tax.
Right.
Fees.
It's a pass through. Yeah.
It's a pass through, and the cable company would give that back to us, and then we would use it on whatever we wanted.
Right.
And we said, wait a minute here. Why are only the people that use cable paying a franchise fee, and then that goes to the city where we're using it all for just Why are just them paying for everybody else?
Well, and we've made that case about franchise fees. How they always sell. Well, we're gonna
for the streets.
We're gonna do streets with them, but they put it in their general fund, and it goes wherever they want it to go.
Correct.
And we've pointed that out to I don't know how many people that that the roads are the sales pitch.
Right.
It's not, but it's interesting, Mark, because Oak Grove so stands out. You can go 5 miles south or 10 miles east or something, and you'll see a totally different, not only mentality, but a totally different, tax structure. And some city has $50 million in special assessments, and they owe. I mean, what?
It takes courage.
Yes, I mean, why hasn't what you've done spread everywhere? Why hasn't somebody taken your blueprint in city X, name whatever that is, and run with it?
I'm very. People want to come out to Oak Grove now. We've put Oak Grove on the map because people realize that we're the lowest. Here's something else I haven't mentioned. When I first took over on city council, we were 19th out of 25 total cities. The highest, we were 19. Hear me, 19 out of 25
in Anoka County.
In Anoka County. By the time we were done, we were 0 We were the lowest tax city in all of Anoka County.
They weren't number one; they were zero.
We were zero. We were at the bottom of the list. We were the start to the. I don't want to say one, right? That's not as good as zero.
Yeah.
But that, and the mayor of Ham Lake, Mike Van Kirk, Mayor Van Kirk, and I go back and forth when I was mayor. I'm going to beat you. No, I'm going to do this to beat you.
Oh,
and they've got more commercial than we do. We have mostly residential that pays the taxes. One of the things that really bothers me as a business owner, I own a commercial building in Ramsey, and I pay a lot of money for commercial I have 1.5 acres, 21,000 square foot building. I pay almost $50,000 in property taxes. My home at home is about under 5,000, and I got 20 acres there. So it's like businesses pay the abundantly more property taxes than homeowners, and I think that, yes, that's the way Minnesota set it up, because why? Us big bad business owners can afford to pay it. Well, that's not really true. Because if I didn't have to pay that $50,000, I'd be paying that money to more employees, to more equipment, to other things. I don't think it's fair that businesses have to pay extraordinarily amount more of taxes.
Right. And they don't get a vote unless they live in the city.
Yeah,
That's right.
My business is in Ramsey.
Yeah, exactly.
I have no vote.
We've pointed that out, that most business owners don't live in the city that their business is in.
Right, right.
And also the whole thing is that gets passed off onto customers and so on and so forth.
Yes.
It gets taken out of employee raises. It gets taken out of expanding a business. It gets taken out of, that. I mean, that's a huge. That's a salary for a employee for a year, maybe more.
Absolutely. Yeah. Being an elected official was both a blessing for me because I learned a heck of a lot. I learned what happens with county commissions, how things work from a city to a county. I learned what happens in the legislature. I actually helped write new ordinances or new laws, 473.857, that changed the way Met Council could shove their viewpoints down cities' throats.
We got to get to Met Council stuff because that's the fun part.
Yeah.
So, Mark,
Okay.
give us a little background on what you're talking about. I mean, our audience knows the Met Council pretty well. The planning, 7-county, 189 city planning entity, call it that.
Yeah.
That operates the transit and all that stuff. But they do so much more than people realize, and they have so much more authority, I think, than.
Their tentacles have gone everywhere.
Oh, they're 5,000 octopuses.
Yeah, they were originally supposed to just do sewer and water and then a few other things. And they've gotten into everything. And you know what? They have taxing authority. They can come into a city and dictate. Like in my community, for example, years ago they came in and they said 1,100 acres of your city will become high density. You will set it aside for high density, which essentially is a taking, because everywhere else in our community you could develop one home per 2.5 acres. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the overall. When you get a developer wants to come in, we guide that property, one home per 2.5 in our city. Mm-hmm. Other cities do it differently. But those people that are in that 1,100 acres, the only way they could develop was 3 homes per acre with a private collection system until the Met Council shoved a pipe into Oak Grove to collect to a Met Council sewer system.
So explain how they did that. Like how did they tell you? What were the, if you tried to fight it, what were the consequences? I mean,
we tried to change our comp plan to allow those areas to redevelop just like the rest of our city, and they said absolutely not.
Okay.
You're going to set that area aside for high density. So you can subdivide an 80-acre parcel, but you have to keep it in 10-acre parcels and plan for 3 homes per acre. We don't have 3 homes per acre anywhere in our community other than around the lake area that we have. We have Lake George. And then there's a golf park PUD or planned unit development where it's high density, higher density. And that was something that was shoved down our throat too. So the Met Council then will mandate, and they will not deviate, because in their eyes, they're saying, well, in 20 years, you're going to have 40,000 people, and you're going to need that high density. And I said, not on your life. And so I started working with the local other city administrators at East Bethel, Ham Lake. I talked to the mayor of Andover at the time, and they didn't have any plans for future growth into Oak Grove in any direction, and it didn't make sense. So they were planning for Oak Grove with plans that they didn't have funding for, they didn't have plans for, they didn't have any projections that meet any kind of high-density development needs in Oak Grove, but yet they refused to let it go.
So I guess just to clarify.
Sure.
What did that mean? Like, so if you wanted to do something different, how can they stop you? I mean, what do they threaten to do to you? Do they threaten to, we're not going to run water through there? Do they say,
No.
we're going to take away your grant money? I mean, how does it go back and forth like that?
The Bible of every city in the 9-county, 11-county area is the comp plan.
Yeah.
And they have authority to approve or deny your comp plan as written. So if you, every 10 years, you have to go through and do a comp plan rewrite, and then we just said we want to, and I've been involved since the 2010 comp plan, which was written in 2008. So, I mean, I was through this whole process. And we just, every time we'd say, we want to change this area, and they'd say, no, we're not going to approve it. Well, what are you going to do to us? If we don't, we'll take you to court. We'll sue you as a city.
So back to, what was that city out by Woodbury that went through? Lake Elmo.
Lake Elmo.
They got beat. Lake Elmo got beat.
But that's a whole different thing because, see, everybody threw that at me for many, many years. They'd say, remember Lake Elmo? And
he was waiting for me to say it.
Yeah. They'd say, remember Lake Elmo? Remember what they did? Well, Lake Elmo was a totally different deal. They said, look, we'll guarantee this if Met Council does this. And Met Council paid for either an on-ramp or off-ramp. I don't remember the specifics. But Met Council sued them because the city didn't follow up with what they did. What Met Council did to our city was say, you will just set aside, we're only 36 square miles. 36 square miles. 1,100 acres in one small, in the lower south portion of our city. We had to set aside for high-density development. We don't have 3 homes per acre anywhere. And it didn't make sense. And the development plans didn't make sense. And they didn't have any plans to pay for a sewer pipe. And there's another whole story there, too. They shoved East Bethel City Council put in this huge $20 million collector system with all they took out a bond and they were going to force that pipe into Oak Grove. And we said, why? We don't want it. And we're not going to pay for it. And then if you did do that, the costing to each of the residents that were going to hook up to it didn't make sense.
Right.
So we just said, no, we're not going to do it, and we're not going to force those people in that area to live through their inability to, I don't know, that's not the right word, but their inability to subdivide like everybody else. So I fought it. And I went down to the Met Council. I wrote a lot of nasty letters. You should see some of my cool writings that I gave them. If you've ever been to the Met Council's headquarters, I actually argued they have this big conference room in the basement with all these screens and all these microphones all over and everything.
Of course they do. Each member has 13 of them, right?
Oh, it's so frustrating because the first thing I said to him, does it really matter what I say? And it didn't. I realized they didn't care what I said. I'm the mayor of a community that was elected, and I'm fighting for their rights. And they didn't care one iota because they knew that there was a statute in law that said even if I wanted to take it to court, which we did, 473.857 says, thou shalt not question the reasonableness of a Met Council decision. So the judge went through this whole dissertation, and at the end he said, I don't have the ability because it's in statute that you can't question the reasonableness of the Met Council's decision, no matter what. And I got that changed.
Dang, you had to have a strict constructionist as the judge. I commend that judge for calling for a change in the law, though. That's the proper procedure,
Yes.
even if you're right on the issue.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I was very fortunate to do a lot of good things, not only from a tax basis, from reducing spending in our city to long-term planning for capital improvement programs for our roads and looking at real, long-term things, because any elected official that would just go in and say, we're going to cut taxes. Well, how are you going to do it? You got to look at, okay, who can we cut? Where do we cut reasonably? What's the long-term effect? What's the short-term? That's like running the city like a business. You don't want to cut all your employees and then your customers are looking for all their product. You can't do that, right? You can cut costs, but it's not reasonable.
And always to keep in mind that cities do have duties that they have to do, whether that's public safety,
Yes.
and things like. There are expectations of a city, and those have to be met too. I mean,
Yeah.
you have to keep that. Everybody has
Fire,
to keep that in mind. Yeah,
police, first
Roads.
responder, roads. There is requirements. The question gets into at what level do you start saying, do you want a $20 million community center for aqua events that everybody, or at what level do you say it's not government's role to entertain everybody?
but we see this a lot, Mark. We see keeping up with the Joneses everywhere. One city's got a hockey rink, so the next city has to have one. One city's got a pool, the next one has to have an amphitheater. One city's got a community center, another city has to have a meeting place or a green. I mean, I don't know. It seems like every time I pick up the paper or look online or do something like that, there's a story of a city building something somewhere that is not public safety, roads, the essentials of government. What is with the keeping up with the Joneses attitude?
I've never applied myself to that mentality. I don't believe that that we should be in the business of taking people's money for entertainment purposes of a specific, whether it's an amphitheater or huge parks or huge trails or setting aside all this stuff. It just doesn't make sense. At what point is enough, right?
Yeah.
The more trails you have, the more people you have to maintain them. Mm-hmm. More equipment you have to have for them.
More plowing, the more
absolutely. At what point do you just say, look, we are in a community, but at what level is necessary? And it goes to the wants, right? There's necessary things, and then there are things that would be nice to have. The things nice to have worth the taxation and the extra expenses? I don't know. You got to say, if we're in this never-ending spiral where government's the answer for everything, then why not just open your wallet? Why not have your business give your check directly to the government, and then they can give it back what they feel you deserve left?
Well, there won't be very much.
No.
But what you say, though, is it sort of hits home, too. It's like, okay, I need to pay the rent. I need to have my car. I need electricity. I need food. Okay, I don't need $200 hockey tickets. Okay, I mean, it's decisions we all make every day that you're talking about. I mean, it's as simple as that.
Yeah, I've never been I believe government should be in the background, not mandating where I go buy my turnip sprouts and my beef steaks, right? You know,
that
if I want
transit-oriented development is out then?
Oh man, don't even get me going
Oh,
on
boy.
that. Oh, you swatted a hornet's nest there.
I stepped on it with both feet.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, it's funny. I think you alluded. Well, I know you alluded to it earlier that a lot of times there are good employees in government.
Yes,
but the tendency of employees, especially when you're talking city manager, you're talking about the head of the city planner. You're talking about like the people that run the different departments in a city. I know I've probably got into a little bit of hot water because on this show I have likened them to the deep state, where they have an agenda. They come from these college courses and these majors, and they're like, this is the way I want to do it. I've heard all about it from the American Planning Association, the League of Minnesota Cities. They're pushing for this. So
in many cases, the cities send them to their workshops and conferences.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And so they have a plan. This is what I want to do, and
Here's how we get the free money to do it, right?
So, we're going to write the legislation, and we're going to submit it to the advisory commissions, and we're going to get because they don't, they think that we have the best interest of the city at heart. The advisory commissions give it their recommendation, and the city councils then take a look at it. They think that we've got the best intentions for the city at heart, and really what you've got are a group of people that, with the attitude, I was here before you got here, I'll be here after you leave.
Yes.
And we're going to get this through one way or another.
A lot of city staff believe that elected officials are a temporary inconvenience to their operation.
Although there's a lot of elected officials that just don't get in the way either.
Yeah, they, the mindset of, well, they're the city administrator, or they're the finance director, or they're the public works supervisor. They're untouchable. They know their job, and you're just an elected official, and you're on the outside. Right. You don't understand the inside. Why the heck do you think I volunteered to be the city administrator?
Right.
Why do you think I did that? Because now I'm on the inside.
Yeah.
I watched what they did. I watched who was really doing their job, who wasn't, who was taking advantage of it. And if it's happening in my city, I'll bet you any money that it's happening everywhere. There's a lot of elected officials that get in there and they go, well, they need a strong, or somebody, I don't know if that's the right word, demonstrative, somebody that's in charge that's going to tell the mayor, tell the city council, this is what you're going to do.
Right.
And they go, okay. And I'm not one of those guys.
Right. And so you've got in a appointed or employed branch of government.
Yes.
Your whole executive branch of government are people that have been hired to do a job, and they're not responsible to the people at all. So how do we...
What you're comparing it to when you say the deep state is, okay, you've got the State Department.
Right.
They've been there for 30 years. They'll outlast this president and the next one and the next one. And you're right, though. That's a fair comparison, I think.
I think so, too. They've got their agenda, Civil Society 2.0 of bringing up new leaders and fomenting revolution in countries where it's needed. And they don't care what the president says, to the contrary, just like in a city. We're going to implement this Complete Streets program. We are going to join Green Step Cities. We are going to make sure buildings are up to LEED standards, whatever it is.
But how many elected officials do you know that'll actually come out and say, we disagree with these Green Step programs, they do not make sense, they cost money?
All I want them to do is read their packets before they go to a work session.
There's a lot of that too. Yeah, they get elected.
How many people read the 2 pages and don't do their own research, don't do what you do? Is why, how much? The questions you always ask, and heard you say them a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, if every council person just did that, just did 2 hours of, well, not to yours.
Yeah, I went overboard.
You
I
didn't go
spent
overboard.
days and days preparing for my city council meetings. I would get together with. You can't get together with more than
form a quorum.
Yeah, you can't form a quorum, so you can get together with one other city council member, as me as mayor, and then we would go over the budget. We would go over line items. We'd go over expenditures. We'd look at planning maps. We would, and I don't do anything halfway. Anybody that knows me personally knows I don't sleep well. I'm a workaholic, and I am very passionate about the things I focus on. And the city's leadership was something that I was so passionate on, just like my business.
Yeah.
And it's important that, this Omar thing is driving me nuts. No, I'm not in her district, but the nonsense that she brings, the anti-Americanism, the anti-Semitism that she brings to this country, and the things that she did, and she's an elected official because why? Because she's a token of that group. Mm-hmm. That just doesn't make sense.
No, what doesn't make sense is somebody who comes to this country as a refugee, and we take in and we treat well, and then they tell me what a terrible country this is.
Yes,
that's what drives me.
Yeah, there's a term for that though: lack of assimilation.
Yeah, there is. That.
I have great respect for anybody that comes here legally, that wants to be part of the community, that embraces their heritage, but we have to get to a point where we are Americans first and cultural second. I am a proud American with a culture of, I'm partially Russian, German, and Swede, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm an American first. I'm not a white American. There's no such place as white. And if we want to be a one community, we got to stop being this labeling everybody. Name one other country that does that. One other. Do you ever hear of a? I
hear about the French Canadians all the time.
Do you? Okay, well, yeah, but they have their own area up there, right? Yeah.
They can have Quebec or Montreal, and everybody gets the rest.
No, I just, it's the passion, I think, for me is that's why we connected so well, because you guys are so passionate about what you want to bring to let everybody learn from your experiences. I've learned so much in my 26 years of giving to my community that I had the skills and I had the ability, and I proved that I could do the job. That was all I cared about.
The city gives back the passion, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, though, Mark, I got to ask you a question. Now, you're not the mayor anymore.
Correct.
So what are you planning on doing now? Are you we'll have a little fun with this. Are you thinking about anything else? Are you working on any campaigns or any issues out there that you're passionate about that you're getting into? What are you doing with yourself in the time that you have, other than running a business, obviously, which takes up a lot?
The focus that I have on my business is utmost important. I mean, obviously, I couldn't be an elected official if I went bankrupt and, I lost my house and all that. So I am focusing 100% on my business. I am active on Facebook. I'm active in going to the BPOU. BPOU is Basic Political Unit for the Republican Party. I'm a delegate. I watch and monitor. I donate to certain campaigns in the background. I joke around. A lot of people when I go speak, I talk to, I think the largest crowd I've ever spoke to was 300 people, and I got a standing ovation.
Where was that?
Down at the University of Minnesota. I was a co-chair of an event with Pete, I can't remember, real popular spokesperson. Anyways, I gave a speech about who I am and what we can do as an elected official if you want to follow conservative values. But I'm always asked, that question. Why don't you come and be my mayor? Why don't you run for governor? Why don't you run for House of Representatives? I've been asked all of those things. I coined a term on my personal pages. I tell people I'm the GIT.
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 Get?
Yeah, GIT. Governor in training.
Oh, okay.
It's I'm not that egotistical that I think that I'm the greatest slice of bread, but I think that what we need to do is focus somebody that's passionate, that's got a foundation, that can show that they're different, that they're not going to be part of what's happening. Both sides of the party has put Minnesota in the place it's in right now.
Yes, agreed.
Both sides. And we've come a long way to where we're at, but having a 2% reduction on a 10% increase for the last 10 years is not my idea of conservative governments.
Right.
It's funny you say that, because I remember back in 2011, and the last time I ran into Kurt Zellers, I mentioned this. That was a while ago, and I mentioned this to him. I don't know Kurt very well, but since he was right over in Maple Grove, very close here,
yeah.
I said to him, you guys once shut down, and Amy Koch is somebody I know a little bit.
Yeah.
I said, you guys shut down the government on a $34 billion biennium budget. We're over 50 now.
Yeah.
10 years later, not even 10 years later, starting in 2019, 8 years. That's how much we've gone up. I mean, it is mind-boggling when you put it there. And I know not everything's just about the budget, but the mindset of, let me keep playing here the get game, because I have long argued that
GIT.
GIT.
Yeah.
I put my own.
Yeah, I know.
I have long attended. I've been in this business for 18 years myself, since I was 25. So you can guess I'm 43. And I have gone to Tea Party events. I've gone to caucuses, conventions. I mean, I've been doing this for almost all of my adult life.
Right.
And every time I go, I hear the same thing. I hear, oh, we're going to cut this, and we're going to do that, and we're going to hold the line, and we're going to get rid of the Met Council, and we're going to blah, blah, blah. And after 18 years, I sit here and I go, okay, not only has none of that happened, but the next time I hear that, okay, I might jump off of a cliff up in Duluth or something, because I can't listen to it anymore. It's like nobody there on either side has got the credibility to say that anymore.
Yeah. Well, if I was elected, let's just play that. So
you're like the only, but you can say it, and show the example of how you've done it.
Right.
Which is very different than anyone else.
That's right. And
did I just make a sales pitch there?
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. I really sincerely am humbled with people that say that to me, because they strive for somebody that can come out and be that passionate and stand up against what they're trying to do and work night and day at getting rid of the Met Council. One of the first things I would do, Met Council's done. Period.
That's
over.
Good.
Yeah. Absolutely gone.
I would say I joked with Jeff Johnson. What would happen if you didn't appoint anybody?
No, you
would it just?
Yeah,
nothing would happen.
There's only a part of the Met Council is dealing with the finances, some of the finances, and I don't have the details right here. I didn't prepare for that, but
it's all right.
You're
a governor in training. You don't have to prepare
that's right.
for that.
And I've been doing that for many years, right? I could train for the next 20 years.
We always say at this show there are no graduates.
Yes, that's right.
Learning never stops.
That's right. Some of the things that really bother me is this abuse that's going on with finances. I mean, the $200 million in abuse of DHS.
Yeah, they all got hired over at Ramsey County.
Yeah, the people that are abusing that, and they don't go after them and fire them. They just allow them to quit and go into another management position in another area.
What about severance?
That's right. And then what about the people that wrote the software for the driver's license stuff. And I mean, it's a never-ending waste. Can you imagine the hundreds of millions of dollars that could be put back into the kitty if they had decent management that would oversee that?
You know what I'd like to do is take all the money that we'd save, get it all in coins, and then remember how Uncle Scrooge used to swim in it? That's what I want to do. I want to swim in all the money that we can save.
Peter on Family Guy, he got rich and he got rich and he had a whole shipload of coins and he took a dive into it. It didn't end well.
I got a better body than him. But yeah.
I don't think you dive into a pile of coins. Let me tell you. But there's a lot of things. I think if somebody's smart, that we can turn the negative. The Democrats do a wonderful marketing job of making everything that we as conservatives do on the defensive.
Mm-hmm. I feel like we're always on the defensive.
Absolutely. And you know what? You don't see anybody turning it around and saying, well, you really feel that way? Don't you like America? Don't you want to have? Do you spend money foolishly? Why do we do it in government? Why do we do it in the city? Why do we do it in the county? Why do we do it the state or the federal government? Why do we do that? Why do we allow that? Why? Because nobody's asking the question why. Nobody's got the courage to stand up and say, I'm going to fight for every Minnesotan. I'm going to take back Minnesota, and I'm going to make Minnesota great again. And that's what we tried to do in a small part in my little community. And we put Oak Grove on the map. And it's a great place, And Minnesota is a great place. It's just getting run by a lot of left-wing people right now that have this agenda that they can't tax enough, they can't spend enough, and it will never end unless you get people that will band together and stand as conservatives.
Well, I wonder if I'm going to live to see that.
Yeah.
You think you're going to?
That's the goal,
I know
isn't
one way
it?
we could,
Yeah.
but I won't say on the air. Here's another thing. I'll just throw one more thing out. You talk about, I always talk about always being on the defensive. I've posed this question to other people, and the Met Council's the best example I can think of. It's like you all complain about it, okay? But and maybe I'm wrong on this, because I used to be very astute at reading the House files and the Senate files, as laborious as that was, because I didn't want anybody's spin on it. I didn't want the media taking one line and that's all they talk about for 2 weeks. If you don't like the Met Council, why is it that not only do I never see a piece of legislation that reduces their authority, that reduces their funding, that why don't we ever horse trade it for something else? Like we tell Governor Walz, all right, you want your money for this? Well, you're going to agree to this. It's never there. And yet I get told, oh, we're gonna have school choice, and we're gonna have blah blah blah. And then all of a sudden there's an omnibus bill at the end, and we didn't get anything out of it.
Yeah, the omnibus bill is the biggest fiasco in Minnesota history. In my opinion, I'm going to be honest about this. The ordinance change to my city, Kurt Dowd, actually helped me put it into the omnibus bill, forcing the governor to sign it. I felt kind of sleazy about that. I had to go home and take a shower. And then the next year I went in and worked at testifying at different committees to get that law changed that took away the reasonableness clause from the Met Council and allowed an attorney to look at it. And that got thrown into an omnibus bill. I felt sleazy that day, and I had to go home and take a double shower.
You pruned up.
Yeah, I did. I felt really bad about that we used the process that I detest to get something through that was positive for our community. And that law change will affect any community that wants to question the Met Council's overbearing mandates on their communities. I think that we have a law on the state book that it has to be every law has to be what's the word? It has to be one single line item, right? And they throw anything in there.
A lot of single lines.
Yes.
A lot of single lines add up to whole pages, right?
Yep.
And I think we need to get back to that. If you don't want to vote for a $20 million rest stop along 35W on the way up to Duluth, we shouldn't have that spending. And we should be able to vote that down. Mm-hmm. Or the governor should have line item veto on any item in the omnibus bill.
Yeah.
Well, and it is frustrating because I put myself in the legislature sometimes in my head and wonder if there's anything I'd vote yes on. I mean, I get to that point. It's like, okay, there's 400 things in a bill that none of them have anything to do with each other. I like 231 of them, but are the 169? I'm exaggerating.
Right.
Are they worth the 231?
Well,
and I'm going to have to answer to this.
Right.
This was put in front of my face that somebody else negotiated an hour ago.
So why should people across the United States pay for a civic center in a small community that, a $10 million civic center because they want a community center in their community? Mm-hmm. Why should we do that? I'm asking. Why should we do that?
I have no idea.
But it happens every day.
Yeah. Every day. Yeah, if I was governor, you've never heard me say that before.
All right.
I never have.
I would send every that's what I call them, ominous bills, back to the legislature, and I would say, you send these to me in separate bills, or I'm not signing a single thing.
Absolutely. That's exactly what should happen. We need to also, in my opinion, when I went down there and testified 2 years in a row, and I took weeks off of my business to go down there and testify on behalf of the residents. Mm-hmm. I felt like I was being treated like a third grader. I mean, I really.
It's intimidating.
It is. You go in front and testify at these committees, and the opposite team, if you will, they just treat you like dirt.
Yep.
Oh, you do this and you do that.
I testified in favor of voter ID. How do you think I got treated?
Yeah.
Every time I see Tom Emmer, I'm like, you did that to me. Just
see,
that.
That's one thing that I strongly agree with is if we have. You remember overseas there was a community, I can't remember where it was, but there was a Time magazine cover where the women were holding up fingers that had blue ink on it.
Right.
Because that proved that they voted, and now because they had ink on their finger, they couldn't vote again. That was their way to guarantee the integrity of their election system. And for some reason, we've gotten pansy on the fact that we can't call people out for voting once, and you can't be dead, you can't be a felon. There's certain things that you have to do, right, to be able to vote as your responsibility. But yet, there are so many people that are abusing that. They're taking busloads of people from one district to another and saying, I vouch for them, I vouch for them, I vouch for them.
As a former election judge, I couldn't agree more. I'll never do that again.
Yeah. I just think that we have to get strong, and we have to say, if an election means anything, then it has to be held. I think voter ID is an absolute. Anybody today that argues the fact that we don't need voter ID, we can vouch for people, you're stopping voters. Every one of those people have to have an ID for some portion of their welfare, for their being on a road, driving a vehicle, going on an airplane, bank accounts. There's a whole list. I mean, I've got them all I could read them all off to you. But
what do they do without an ID? What does anyone do?
Right. You can't. I mean, you get pulled over by a police officer, the first thing they do is say, can I see your ID? Mm-hmm. And if you don't have it, then what?
The assumption is you don't have it for a reason.
Right.
I mean, that's what their training is to say.
Right. But, there's a lot of things that that we haven't gotten strong enough as conservatives. I tell people that I'm a conservative, but I'm an active Republican. I want to be proud of being a Republican, but it's really hard. It's really hard when you go, they're proud about a 2% reduction on a 10% increase. How do we be proud of that?
I've been promised vouchers since the early 90s, and I don't recall getting those anytime. Yeah, here's the thing, too, and we'll wrap this up in a second. But Mark, I mean, like the one thing, I go back, one of my formative experiences was the Contract for America. And you got to remember, I was the son of a feminist and a Teamster. So I mean, that was the household. They were great people, but that was the household I was raised in.
Sure.
Reasonable people. I've turned my dad around a little bit. I think the party left him.
Yeah.
That's what I always tell him.
Right.
But, and I remember a handful of those items I will never forget. And it was kind of, okay, how come we can't today come up with 3, 4, 5 simple things like welfare reform or balanced budget, and I'm trying to remember the other ones at that time, that we can all agree on, stick with, and these are the 3 to 5 things we're not compromising on. We haven't done that since 1994.
Yeah, you know why? Because they condemn you. It's like pushing grandmother. Remember that commercial you want to push grandmother off the cliff, right?
But we know that's coming, and we have to have an intellectual response to it.
So it's a marketing thing again. It's a messaging thing, and they're afraid to stand up and turn it around on people. And I truly believe that. If you want to see passion, if you want to see people start getting active, and that's something that you asked early on, was how do you get people active in doing things like I did, like you did, when you go door to door? Right, you offer people to come to your BPOU, or you offer them to get involved in your community.
Right.
Very, very few of them get involved because they're losing interest. They don't see any difference. What difference does it make if I get involved? I'm going to waste all this time I hear in politics. Politics doesn't want me. I don't need politics, right? Whatever happens. It doesn't control. It doesn't change anything I do. But you know what? I believe in standing up because I think I can make a difference. And I think the 26 years that it took me to be mayor, I still have a lot more to learn, and I have a lot more to give. So who knows where that's going to take it.
All right. GIT.
Yes.
Well, Mark, thanks so much for your time and great education for us and for our audience to finally hear it after a few years of talking about Oak Grove. Our audience finally gets to meet Mark.
It's an honor, guys, again. And like I said, I mean, you guys were there early on in my mayor years, and spreading that word is something that I look up to you guys to continue to do.
And we will.
Count on it.
But it can't be just us. Now we've got to have a whole slate of people across the state that are willing to do it. And 2 yokels in one part of the metro can't get it done, and so that's why we appeal to everybody out there. It's about standing up in your community and taking ownership of where you live and caring about your neighbors and your family enough to take a few hours out a month to put it back into, I hate to say politics, I like to say governing. Mm-hmm. There's a difference between government and politics is nasty. Politics is fighting, politics is dirty tricks and just hurling insults around and trading deals. And governing in its pure essence, as the Constitution lays it out, it's a noble thing.
I hate that word, being a politician. I just hate it.
I like to use serving.
Yeah, I just I strive to be a statesman. I strive to be a leader. Mm-hmm. All the decisions I make, not everybody's going to agree with them, but at least they'll understand why I made the decision. I'm not going to hide in a corner. And I wish other politicians, other elected officials would come out and do that same thing.
Yes. Me too, and I think that there's a whole bunch of people out there that are fit for the job. I mean, we look at the way that people voted in the last presidential election, and not even 2% of those people are involved in the governing process, whether that's advisory commissions or being elected to a local body. And that's got to change.
We have to get more people involved.
Yeah, a couple million people vote in the presidential election, and 2 years later, a few thousand show up at caucus.
Yeah.
I mean, on both sides.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it really was pathetic. So, yeah, I mean, and you know my opinion of caucus,
Right.
so I won't lay it out here. Won't chew my food twice, but, you know, point being, that's what we have. Whether we like it or not, whether we like a primary, whether we like BPOUs or being a delegate or being an alternate or serving on a commission. And there's other ways to volunteer, like you and I talk about. There's VFWs, there's Legions, there's Boy Scouts, there's Beyond the Yellow Ribbon, there's Lions Clubs. There's a million things you get involved in a way to serve your community that don't have to have an official government tag on it. But we always encourage people to think big here, Jay.
Well, you know, it's great to belong to the Moose Lodge, but you're not going to set tax rates, you know, and you're going to have to pay the same amount of taxes whether you're, you know. So
No, I don't
why
pay
not?
them. Somebody else does. I'm going to tax somebody else instead.
Is that how it works?
Oh, I thought that's what we did now.
Well, if you guys thought that Mark's story was great and you think that maybe that's something that you could do in your own community, why don't you get a hold of us? COMMsolutionsmn@gmail.com.
And even if you don't, get a hold of us anyway.
Yeah, COMMsolutionsmn@gmail.com. We'll twist your arm and make you do it. Well, thank you guys so much for being with us. I think maybe, you know, in the future we'll have to have Mark back to talk about some other things, because governing is a huge topic, and there's lots of changes I think that we would like to see happen. And so,
Well, if I can inspire people,
Yeah.
if I can at least have somebody think about just showing up at their city council meeting, and when the city council member says something, you go, why? Why does this happen? Why do you need that? That's the first step in making change.
yeah, absolutely.
Y, our favorite letter of the alphabet. All right.
Boy. So we thank you guys for listening to this, and hopefully it did inspire you. Let us know, you know, and put your comments down there, and share this far and wide so that we can build our force of people willing to play offense and get out there and do something in this state. Because we love you, Minnesota, but now it's your turn to get to work.
Take my life, caught a break between the lines. Don't let me be. If I get too caught